change that a little bit. And guess what? We're live.
We're live.
Hey.
Hi.
So I'm here with Kimberly Kochem.
Kochem.
Do you know I've been saying Kochem?
I've been hearing it my whole life. It's okay.
So thank you for being on here. Kochem is Miss Kochem is the executive director of the Center for Prevention of Child Abuse.
Yep.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
Supposedly, I just told you that you were going to be on here. I didn't invite you.
No, there was no invitation. You just said, guess what? You're going to be a guest. And I said, okay.
Well, I've gotten to know you over the last year from, in full disclosure, I'm on the marketing committee. Is that what I'm on?
Yep.
So I've got to, Natalie and I have worked with you all and just, making some videos and putting out more awareness. But I feel like, we've learned a little bit in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are some figures and statistics that you've said over the past year that were just, it's alarming. And I'm not necessarily to talk about the direness of
right.
some aspects of it out here. But I think that you opened our eyes a little bit on some stuff. And I don't know what we're going to talk about today. It's not going to be about child abuse necessarily, but we're going to talk about children and parenting maybe and all that, right?
Okay. Well, I think that's important because one of the things that we talk about at the office all the time is our name is the Center for the Prevention of Child Abuse, but we do so much more than that.
Right.
So there's interventions when child abuse does occur. There's education to prevent it. But we also provide education for little kids so that they can stand up for themselves or tell a trusted adult if something happens. So it really is a lot more holistic, and we were joking the other day when we say, I'm from the Center for the Prevention of Child Abuse, people will look away, look down. It's like people are scared of those two words.
Well, and one of the things you said in the video, which we used in the video, was that we're not here to wag our finger. What did you say? We're not here to wag our finger at you because of screen time.
Right.
That's what you said. And I thought that was that was disalarming. Is that a word? Disalarming?
Disarming?
Disarming. Yeah, better. That's better.
Yeah.
So, we were just talking off camera before we started. It's interesting for me. I just did a talk yesterday to 300 eighth graders.
Oh.
And I was telling them how, and I don't know what this means to them, but I'm seeing somebody who has two children.
Mm-hmm.
They're 14 and 7. And what that has opened my eyes to and made me realize is how hard my mom's job was to raise a child. And I've always put my mom on a pedestal anyway.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's name is Teresa, Mother Teresa. It was that. That's what. No pressure on her, right? But I realized from being around children and being, I guess, a role model in a lot of ways, just by actions, not like you have to do anything.
Right.
It's just a new appreciation for parenting.
Yeah.
And how much. Can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah.
And you're here to talk. I don't know why I'm sorry. I don't mean to be taking over here. This morning, my girlfriend's son we were talking about just knowing things.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that I was talking about mothers worrying because I think it's common for mothers to worry a lot. He was on the phone with his grandmother and his grandmother said, "Be careful outside today."
Mm-hmm.
Me, I'm like, why are we being careful? Because it's wet, it's icy, you don't want to slip, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I as a joke, I was like, moms worry about 100 things and maybe one of them comes true.
Right.
So he goes, parents aren't always right. And I go, no, I'm wrong a lot. But when he said that, it made me think that whatever I say around him, he's going to think that is truth.
Yeah.
So every day, something new happens where it opens my eyes and I'm like, wow, this is really important. Everything that I do.
There are so many teaching moments. And I think that, there's sort of this misconception that there's the perfect way to parent, or I'm not the best mom. I'm not the best mom.
Right.
I don't know who is. I don't know if one exists.
Every mom I talk to doesn't. I don't want to say they don't think they do a good job, but they're they don't know.
I know, but what I heard somebody say to me once was that if you don't if you worry that you're not doing a good job, it's an indication that you actually are, because you care and you're concerned
and you're aware.
Aware. Yeah. And so, I have a son too. His name is Kyler. He's 8 years old, and he's like a really curious guy. And we have lots of conversations, and lots of really honest conversations, not, to have age-inappropriate conversations. But I think that the special bond that we have is that he can ask me anything, and I can talk to him about it in a way that makes sense to him. So he's not then wondering, who can I talk to about this, or thinking that his thoughts are wrong. And I think the most important thing when we go into the nurturing parenting classes to teach parents how to develop a nurturing relationship with their child. Like, it's not about the screen time. Is that a factor? Sure. Of course we talk about it. But it really, at the end of the day, the most important thing is that your child feels that you love them and that you're able to protect them and provide for them the things that they need to be safe.
So what is so let's say somebody I don't know the situation where somebody comes in for your services, but when they have a child who's in that range, like, it's interesting for me because my girlfriend's son is 7. Kyler's 7, you said? 8. So what's like a common thing that parents ask about when they're talking about raising an 8-year-old, or like, how do I talk to them about?
Right. Well, what we really find, because a lot of the parents that come to us are mandated through either CPS or through the court system. We do offer parenting classes in jail for people that are incarcerated. And what we find is that these parents are just regurgitating the way that they learned to parent from their parents.
Right. Because that's the only place you really learn.
Right. So what we're doing is we're kind of level setting and saying, think about how you felt when your parent hit you, or when your parent ignored you, or when your parent left you home by yourself at night without dinner. So we're really starting back with like the person. And a lot of reparenting goes on. So, it's a lot of self-reflection. It's very intense. And we do have, we partner with Grace Smith House and Family Services to provide one-on-one counseling if like really serious stuff comes up. But we meet every parent that comes through our doors wherever they're at. We're not judging them. We're not looking down at them. We're happy that they're there and that they're doing the best that they can for their kid. And so the conversation really always starts with, well, what was it like when you were a kid? And that opens a lot of people's eyes, because they don't understand that you don't have to, there are other ways to discipline a child if they're not listening to you. Or, if you need to take a time out and, go take a hot bath and your child is safe, then do that, as opposed to losing your temper or, throwing something inside the house.
Are parents worried about, this is a curiosity question for me, because, I hear, I guess, previous generations say, well, like even when they talk about school, well, when I was in school, teachers would hit us with a ruler, make us sit on tacks, and yeah, you're like, whoa,
we
really?
Walked uphill both ways, right, in the snowstorm. I know.
You're like, wow, you did. But so our parents, are some of them, I know they're mandated, but are some parents worried about that they're afraid to talk to you or your organization about it because they might be revealing something that would be reflected poorly upon? Are they afraid they could get in trouble for, like, am I onto anything there?
It's true. Yeah, they do. And we do have to tell them all, like, our staff, all of us are mandated reporters of abuse. So if you come in and you tell us, like, last night I hit my kid a whole bunch of times and I broke his nose and he's okay now, like, we are mandated by the state of New York to make a phone call to the central registry so that gets investigated.
Right.
So we're very upfront about the fact that will happen. If you disclose something severe, that will happen. But we're also encouraging people to be honest, because nobody's perfect. So in an example that I was thinking about, like, you can only do as well as you know.
Mhm.
So if you're raised just watching TV all day, and so that's what you do with your kid, you just plop them down in front of baby Einstein, and it sounds great because it's like baby Einstein. This kid is gonna grow up and be Einstein. Well, that's a conversation because you thought you were doing the best thing at that time, but here's how it could be different. And I remember an example I was just thinking about on my drive down here. When Kyler was little, and I was a first-time mom, single mom, doing absolutely the best that I could, reading all about early childhood development and just trying my hardest. And I was over at my girlfriend's house one day. She had her little kid, and Kyler was there, and Kyler had a box of raisins. And she's like, "Oh, raisins are really, really bad for children." And I was like, "What? I thought it's dried fruit." But it turns out that like they're sticky, so some of the sugar can like stick to their little baby teeth.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Right? But I didn't know. Is that a call to CPS? No.
Right.
So like
right.
this is
Yeah, I
these
only
are
knew
the
about honey. Like I guess you can't give if
Oh.
once they're before 9 up to
I
a
do
year,
remember something like that
you
about
can't give them.
honey.
It's poisonous.
Yes. And Vicks Vapor Rub also bad.
Ooh.
Yes.
Really?
But that's the thing. Nobody knows all of this stuff.
Right.
And so the best thing that we can do is have a conversation about it so it's not so scary.
I'd have to fact check this, but I'd actually read an article that said, I'm staring at SpongeBob. When kids watch SpongeBob, their IQ goes down. But it's I think you're right in I don't try to place too much judgment on anybody because I've never raised a child.
Right.
I couldn't tell somebody else how to do it, but I have to imagine that if you're avoiding a personal relationship with that child,
right,
the outcome's going to be maybe
Right.
not what you expected.
Right. And I spoke just briefly before about the bond that you have with the child, but say, for example, there's a woman who's in a domestic violence situation and she's living in a home with her batterer, and she has an infant, a newborn, 3 months old, who cries and cries and cries. And so all she wants to do is make this baby be quiet so that she isn't beaten.
Right.
She may not even know or be inclined to make eye contact with her baby because she's just in survival mode.
Right.
She's just like going about business so that her and her child stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have those really tender moments where there's a mom that didn't even know that they weren't making eye contact with their baby, or like the baby's crying and we're like, I think that, your little girl is trying to talk to you right now. And it's like they're not even aware because there are so many other competing factors for their attention. It's survival, fight or flight. And so we really, in some cases we have a lot of breaking down of a lot of walls to do. But when you see that 3-month-old baby make eye contact with their mom for the first time, it's pretty magical.
There's definitely something to that. They say one of the first things that children develop is facial recognition, right? Like that, supposedly that's why we see faces in the clouds.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like you see faces in a lot of different places because that's one of the most, can I use this word? Like that's one of the most primitive things about us.
Makes sense.
So we tend to see faces in nature.
Yeah.
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
So is this, I'm thinking for somebody who's a parent, I'm really trying to understand because even, I've known you guys for a year. And we've done videos, and I still feel like I don't completely understand. Right. And I don't mean that as an insult in any way. It's just that you do a lot.
There's a lot. There is.
So I know there's a food pantry. You guys help out with diaper. There are some other services involved, right?
And so in addition to the parenting classes, we have case managers that can spend up to 2 hours a week inside the home with the parent and the child, like modeling appropriate behavior, like teaching them how to lay the baby down on their back and change the diaper.
It's interesting. You would think, again, I'm very ignorant to this and naive, but you hear like people say like a woman's instincts take over, right? And like but you're saying, like, in a way, like there are a lot of
Sometimes
things they
sometimes
don't,
they don't.
right. Because you see like
So
a guy hold a baby for the first time, and it's,
right.
sometimes it looks awkward.
Sometimes it does.
Like my girlfriend's sister had a baby recently, and they were like, "Do you want?" We went to the hospital.
Yeah.
I think the baby was a day old. They're like, "Do you want to
Yeah.
hold it?" And I'm like, "Me? You're trusting me
I
with this
know.
life?" And I'm
I
holding it
know.
like I'm holding like a nuclear bomb. Like I can't drop this. But then I
know.
watched my my girlfriend's daughter. She's 14.
Right.
It almost looked like, I don't want to say she knew it. Even she
Natural.
was a little like unsure of things, but
Right.
it was more like, this is
Yeah.
in me somewhere
Right.
to nurture
It's
this child.
nurturing. Right. Right. But not everyone gets that when they're little,
Right. Well, okay. That's where it comes from, right?
you know.
It's
And
a lot of it's a learned behavior from your childhood.
right. Or things that you watch, you know, as you're growing. And, you know, you may not remember when you were 1 year old, your parents weren't picking you up when they were crying. But if you have a little sibling, now you're 5 and there's a 2-year-old and they're not taking care of the 2-year-old. That's all going into your processing center.
And then how much do you work with the actual children?
We empower the parents to work with the children
Mm-hmm.
in the parenting program. And so we've actually been very careful, because sometimes in a visit, one of our caseworkers will be like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll warm up the bottle." And it's like, no, we really want to make sure that we're empowering the parent to do it. When we're not there, they'll know how. So it's really having them walk through all the steps. But we actually do also work with kids in the school system. We have what's called the personal safety program. And that is a lesson on body autonomy, which is like, my body is private and no one can touch it, except a doctor, you know, if he's giving you a checkup or if your parents are giving you a bath or something like that.
And how old are they when they learn that?
This starts as young as pre-K.
Okay.
And we go through 6th grade. And the lessons change a little bit through the different grades.
It's important because it's such a vulnerable time for, it's like, you know, at that time, it's the first time they're experiencing the world, maybe without their parents.
Yeah. You head off to school. I remember when I had to send Kyler to school for the first time, and I was like, "Oh my God, like, what if, who's he going to sit with on the bus?" Like,
you thought about every possible thing that could go wrong.
What if you can't find the bathroom? Like, you know, and working in this field, it's unfortunate, but your eyes get open to a lot of scary things. You know, and so Kyler was probably one of the youngest. He can recite the song. He'll tell you, like, my body belongs to me. But it's really important that kids get that. And I think that the earlier you start, like, helping them process that into who they are, like, I would never say, like, "Oh, hey, Jeff, before you leave, go hug and kiss my coworker." Right? So does it make sense to, like, order a little kid to do that?
That's interesting. Yeah.
So, you know, obviously kids are affectionate, and, you know, Kyler loves hugging people. And, but I would never be like, "Kyler, we're not leaving until you hug so-and-so."
You're making me self-analyze something right now. You know, you just want, like, the smallest thing. You don't know.
I know.
You don't know what it actually means to somebody.
Yeah.
And especially an impressionable child.
Right.
Because they don't know.
Right.
They don't know better. Is there anything, you know, I always wonder with this, like, I like the idea of, I guess, empowering children. Is there any concern that it would, obviously, we can go into a lot of different ways in this.
Right.
Is there any concern that a child would take it too far? I know, obviously, you want to believe. If a child comes out and says something,
right,
you want the first reaction to believe them. But obviously, you don't just take their word.
Right.
And then kids are known to exaggerate.
True.
So how do you work on? Is there anything with that?
Well, I think that you know, when we're talking,
in no way am I trying to blame children.
No, I understand.
Okay.
But there's just a couple of ways to answer this. So when we're talking about, like, severe cases of, like, child sexual assault, we know that the statistics on that are, like, they almost never lie about something that severe.
Gotcha.
That, you know, sometimes do they want to say something because they feel like they're supposed to give the right answer, or they're confused about, you know, what happened that they thought that wasn't okay, but it wasn't really that bad. Like, I think it's important though that those are times when you take a time out and you really dig in and listen, and make sure that the child is expressing everything and not just dismissing on surface value or acting, on those little snippets. And so where we work at the Center for the Prevention of Child Abuse, we also house the Child Advocacy Center. And so they have
and talk about that real quick, because that was the first one in New York. The Child Advocacy Center. There was something important and monumental.
Yeah. So the Child Advocacy Center is a model for investigating child abuse. It began in Huntsville, Alabama, but we opened the first CAC in New York in 1994. I want to say.
I believe you're right.
I think. So we were the first in New York State, and now others have cropped up in different counties. And what that is, it's very specialized so that children, when they come in to talk about like basically the most horrific thing that's ever happened to them, it's in a child-friendly setting. And we have a multidisciplinary team that works together behind the scenes to limit the number of times that a child has to be asked certain questions. And so, on that extreme kind of case, a child will come in and they, will talk with CPS and law enforcement in a joint investigation. There'll be a lot of investigation done on those kinds of cases. But I think that even, something that came up not long ago, one of the children had disclosed like, oh, well, sometimes my dad walks around and he doesn't have his pants on. And everyone's like, oh my God, this is awful. Like, what could be happening? So, we talked to dad and he's like, well, when I get out of the shower, I put a towel on.
Right.
So there was just a little disconnect.
Just one more question. And
right.
Then it's
right. So now we have a conversation with dad and he's like, I'm going to have to explain that I'm having I have a towel because I'm going to go put on my work clothes or whatever. So, where it really could have been, tragedy if, say we were like, oh, well, who knows what's happening at that house? It could have been something awful. Or if it was punitive, it would have been awful for dad, who really was not necessarily doing anything wrong. He's not abusing his child. He's just getting ready for work. But it's an opportunity to have a dialogue. And I think that those opportunities are good ways for families to connect with their kids. And again, it goes back to like having that bond and being able to talk and have questions, ask questions.
But I loved like the dad's reaction where you can be like, oh, like,
right.
Like it enlightened him a little bit, but like, oh, I see where this could lead to a certain type of thought. And
exactly.
I either need to have a conversation about it or change something. But again, at least I'm aware of what's going on and what they think.
And so that,
because you never really know what children are thinking. You never
really
know.
I know. You don't. And they think a lot. They think
all
the
time.
All the time.
The little 7-year-old, he'll wake up and then he'll just like ask me, he'll be like, so last night I was thinking about, and you're like, you were thinking about that last night? It was so cute. He came up to, I'm pretty public about this. I've been telling people, but so he can't, I've been with my girlfriend for a while. I don't live at her house. Mm-hmm. I'm a little old fashioned. So I believe that I should at least be engaged before I move in, but like, we want to move in together. We want this to happen. So like we started talking about, rings, and I'm ring shopping now. I know it's exciting. She knows. So if she watches this, it's not going to be a surprise. The kids know. So this is what I'm getting at. So I have this little trampoline downstairs in the basement. I just go every morning. I jump on it. Mm-hmm. So he came downstairs and he came like, he's doing like the thing where like he's really awkward. And he's like, Jeff, I have a question. And he's like, it's kind of weird. And I was like, okay. I was like, ask me. I was like, I can answer anything. I don't think it's weird.
Yeah.
He's like, do you ever think that one day that you might marry my mom?
Oh.
And I was like, that's probably going to happen, right? And he goes, I hope so. Oh. And I was like, really? I was like, you'd be okay with that? Your sister be okay with it? He's like, yeah. And then he goes, I knew the first time I met you that you were going to marry my mom. And I was like, how did you know that? He's like, well, when you came to the house the first time, you brought cookie dough. So, I'm like, yeah, right. Oh, it wasn't like some intuition. It was sugar. I got you with sugar.
Right.
But he was thinking about that
Right.
all night.
I know.
He was, and
Yeah.
like, it's so nice that like I felt honored that he would feel comfortable.
Right.
Like that was a little indicator. It's like he must feel comfortable with me. Like that was a nice thing. Like I don't know everything he's thinking.
Right.
But that was kind of cool.
I know. And now you're thinking about it.
And now I'm
So how
thinking
cool
more
is
about what
that?
he's thinking. I'm like, man. And like, what's his sister thinking? She's older.
Yeah.
Like,
I know.
But like again, the stuff with kids, I had an old client reach out to me because they were looking for some footage. I think that's probably why I ended up telling you that you needed to be on this podcast and not asking you, because it was probably 7 or 8 years ago. I got hired to go down to Atlanta to film this sleepaway camp, which was for girls who were victim of child abuse. And they go to sleepaway camp and they have like therapy every day and activities, and they just talk. And I'm filming it. And one of the girls who was, eye-opening, because I want to get into a little bit about this. I don't want to spend too much time on it because it's really heavy. However much time we do it, whatever. I think she was 16 at the time, and she was explaining how basically she had sexual relations with her dad since she was 4. And what she was saying, because some of the kids, like when she said that, they laughed, and not laughed as like making fun of her. Death was like, what do you mean? So she was saying, and they had this whole conversation. It was very open, and she just said to everybody, she goes, listen, I understand now that wasn't the right thing. But she's like, when you're told from the young age of 4 that this is what love is, and you have no other reality or nothing to compare it to, because basically it sounds like she was almost like a prisoner in a lot of ways, like wasn't allowed to experience the world, was very sheltered. And she goes, I understand it now, but she goes, how was I not supposed to believe anything else? And definitely coming up with the Super Bowl coming up, I've always heard that like sex trafficking was always like a big thing around Super Bowl. This was like something that I did not know existed. Like the idea, and I don't know if this is what you guys did. I don't know how much you want to speak on this, but the idea that like there's these things where kids get sent to like Disney World and they meet like some guy that like purchased. I was like, wait, what? How is this happening?
Happens a lot. I mean, it's very unfortunate. Obviously, there's actually a relatively high prevalence of it in our area because we're at a crossroads between 84 and the New York State Thruway. So when they're coming up, they're coming down through upper New York down towards the city, or across from Western New York to go down to the city.
Wow.
There's a lot of hotels in Fishkill that there's been reports of, that kind of activity going on there.
And so what can you do? Like, can you talk to a hotel? Like, are hotels really oblivious, or are they?
Some are, some aren't.
Right.
Some of them have been really good and proactive. There are trainings that are offered. The Dutchess County has a task force against human trafficking. The guy that heads that up, his name is Dave Garcia. So you could definitely get in touch with him in terms of, seeking out additional resources. But it really, again, is an awareness thing. And
I think people think like it just exists like someplace else and not in
like
their
in
home.
Europe, right?
Or just like, well, that would never happen here,
right?
And you're just saying like,
no, it does, and it's not. It's not just the sex traffickers, but the child abusers. That little girl's dad, they're so conniving,
right,
and like charismatic, and they have like perfected this. It's sick. The amount of time that they spend grooming these children to convince them that this is okay, that this is good, that this should be a secret, and that if you tell anybody, here's what's going to happen. You'll never see me again. You'll go to jail. Your mom will go to jail. And it's staggering, the mind control that they have over these people, children. And when you're as young as 4, I mean, who could blame her for believing that that was what she was supposed to do?
Like I said before, you think that everything an adult
Right.
says is just matter of fact.
Yeah.
You have no idea what to really think yet.
Right.
No, so that was like, I don't want to say fascinating, because that's like probably it was mind blowing. Because I was like, there's people, and then those young girls, or I'm sure it's boys too, grow up, and now they become part of our society. Like you might work with somebody, you might not even realize they were in that situation.
Right.
What was really sick about that situation was that was a family ring.
Yeah.
Meaning like you said, they groomed them, but it was like the mother was in on it.
Yes.
The grandmother was in on, like, because they were all through it. And we just like, I like when things come back, we were talking about learned behavior.
Right.
So that was just learned behavior. It was just custom. Became part of the family paradigm, and like, okay, this is our model for how we behave, and this is us.
Right. There was, and just to demonstrate a story that always makes my blood run cold. I was talking to a victim of child sexual assault, grown now, probably in his 30s. But he was being raped and sodomized by his two uncles. And this was going on for years and years.
And they were brothers?
They were brothers. And it was just, it's your turn to go see the uncles in the attic.
Wow. And
then one day he was coming down the stairs and he saw his little sister going up the stairs. And that was the first time that he said anything. So this little guy, he was probably now like 12 or 14. So he discloses all this stuff. And you know what kills me is that his own father was molested by his brothers, but his dad didn't say anything.
Wow.
And because he didn't say anything, his own son was molested by his brothers. And if that doesn't demonstrate like the level of denial or a fear of saying something or talking about it, like we as parents, I'm sure you would agree, you'd do anything to keep your child safe.
It's really hard not for me to, like, when you tell that, obviously this podcast is public and this is live. It's really hard for me not to think like, how do I say it? Like, I want to do something. like it's like, where are they?
We are.
Give me their address. I'll take, no, but I'm teasing. But, it's just like, that's how much it hurts. Because you're like, man, you're like, how many other people, of course, their lives are now tough. Like those uncles, they're not right in the brain. Right. I feel safe to say that. But now you're passing that on, and now that child is now not going to be right in the brain because now they have a lot of just stuff to deal with.
Right.
That person interacts with other people in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And it eventually affects me and you on some level. Like the 6 degrees of separation is a real thing. It might be less than that. Like they had 6 degrees of separation before the internet was even around. So now that the internet's around, now it's 1 degree.
Point. Right.
So everything that you and I do, I believe, affects the world. And that's, that person's...
And the prevalence too, those statistics that we talked about last time, it's 1 in 10 children will be sexually assaulted before they turn 18.
And that's not non-demographical. That's not male or female. That's just 1 in 10
national.
children.
Yep.
In the U.S., do you know if that's U.S. or global?
I think it's U.S. I'll check though.
Okay.
I will.
Even still, even if you said 1 in 100, it's still like that would still be a lot to me.
And of those that are abused, only 1 in 1,000 will say something because they got a personal safety lesson maybe. We taught 15,000 lessons in personal safety last year, 15,000 students. And we had 15 kids come forward and say, something's happening at home. Is it a coincidence?
Right.
But we want to change that.
So, I mean, that's some of the extremes. So even for somebody like me, because I feel like I'm very sensitive, open to what's going on. So now I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So now as somebody, so not in the extreme, because obviously anybody can be like against that, right? Like that's a no-brainer. Everybody's like, yeah, it's messed up.
Yeah.
But so more like the day-to-day stuff, because I'm around children a lot, whether it's my girlfriend's kids or teaching in the schools. Like I'll see anybody from first grade, where they're what, six or seven maybe, up until high school they're 18.
Yeah.
So what would your advice to me about, I'll say touch.
Right.
because obviously we work with equipment and cameras, and
Right.
sometimes I have to like move their hand and stuff.
Yeah.
But like, should I be concerned about how my body is positioned and compared to them, especially if it's a boy or a girl and that
Right.
sort of like, so for the average person.
Yeah. Well, I think that usually your gut instincts are right. Some kids just, if you pay attention, and some kids are eliciting cues, like if you come up too close behind me, I might go like that,
Mhm.
But I think just having an awareness that people have different levels of comfort,
Mhm.
with touch. I know that there's a big push right now around use of the word consent. Like you have to consent to a handshake. I
Do you
think
really?
that you don't have to,
Oh.
but in some places you do.
No, because you told me about the phone before, how it's like a felony to take a phone out of somebody's hands.
That's what I heard. Yeah. Well,
So I just want to make sure.
she was trying to dial the police. I don't know if there's different when you can take the phone, when you can't take
Oh,
the
I see.
phone.
Right.
But I think just having an awareness and like reading people's reaction to your body language is important. And above and beyond that, we talk a lot about trauma that children go through. And there's this study, I think we've talked about it before, the ACEs study. It's
What is
called
that?
the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. It was a study that was done in 1973. Kaiser Permanente was looking at a population of about 17,000 adults with varying degrees of chronic disease, and sort of trying to drill down to the root cause of why some people who grew up in the same area, went to the same school, were so much more sickly than others. And so what they discovered was that a lot of your life expectancy can be derived through the number of adverse childhood experiences that you have. So there's 10 indicators. They range from like having a parent incarcerated, having a parent with an undiagnosed mental illness, violence in the home, drug use in the home.
So each one that maybe is in your life, you can expect your life expectancy to drop?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So what they're saying, there's 10. And they say if you have 4 or more of these indicators, your life expectancy will be about 10 years shorter.
I need to see this list. I need to see if I'm going to be around.
Yep. Look it up. ACEs. ACEs. And if it's 6 or more, they're looking at 20 years shorter life expectancy. Wow. So we look a lot at trauma and how trauma affects development, and it's very sad, and it can be daunting at times because you think like, oh my gosh, this kid has been through so much. Like we see kids that come into the CAC sometimes knowing what they've lived through, and I'm like, how is she smiling and like hugging a teddy bear? It right. is mind-boggling. But the other half of that equation is that children are resilient, and there are resiliencies that they develop and coping mechanisms that they develop. And one of the very most important resiliency factors for any kid of any age is to have one trusting adult that is in their life, that doesn't have to be their parent. It could be a teacher. It could be a film teacher.
Oh, I just got chills because you just made me feel so much better about what I do.
You could. Coaches. I think back on my life and I'm like, oh, I remember, Coach Mark I had in high school. I could talk to him about college and all these things. And so for anyone listening, just to listen to kids, just to be there, just showing up. Like they say, showing up is half the battle. That can make a huge difference in a kid's life. And it doesn't cost anything. I mean, donations to the CPCA are great, but it's a very easy thing to just pay attention to kids. Even I was at McDonald's. I wasn't eating there. I was at McDonald's drinking coffee. And I saw this child and his father was so angry at him. And we had a conversation and we made a phone call. We were in a different state. We had a conversation and we made a phone call because how could you not? Like if you see something, say something. And maybe it was like the dad who's, putting a towel around his waist after he takes a shower Maybe it was just one of those things, but let's draw some awareness to it so it doesn't happen again.
One of the things I hate hearing is, and I'm mindful of this too, but with kids, and if something comes up with their parents, be like, I don't know, my dad's always on his phone. Something like that, where it's like, oh, what is no, I don't know. He's always on his phone, like doing something, or he's always watching the news. And it doesn't matter what it is. It's not the electronic that's the problem.
Right.
It's just that, do you want your, I sound like I'm pointing fingers a little bit, but do you want your child to be saying that? Is that what you want your child's story to be? That I don't have a relationship because of whatever, especially early. I listened to, there's this guy, I think he's a chiropractor. His name is Bruce Lipton. And he has this video that talks about, I'm going to send it to you and you can tell me if there's any truth to it. I was talking to my mom about it and she's like, yeah, I think they debunked some of that stuff, but I'm just curious. But he basically said that up to about 7, like, children are basically in more or less what he calls a hypnotic state. So meaning they're trying to learn the million different rules and things that are going on in the world and trying to make sense out of it.
Right.
They can't really formulate certain things yet, but everything's just coming in. They're just absorbing everything.
Right.
And a lot of your personality is nothing's ever set in stone, because our brains are amazing. Neuroplasticity.
Yes.
That's such a hard word for me to say. That's why I slow it down.
It's one of my favorites, though.
It's a fun word to say when you get it right. But after that, then the only way that you're going to change certain models and paradigms that are in your brain is through repetition, and that's where like the positive affirmation stuff comes in. But so basically, his point was, and I know he referred to like an old scripture or something where the Jesuits were saying, "Give me a child up until they're 7, and I'll." Of course, it was male dominated. So give me a boy, and give me a boy up until 7, and I'll show you the man. So they, even 400 years ago, they believed in this. And like, that's why this means a lot to me, working with you guys and even having you on here talk about it, because, when I talk about the thing that I did in Atlanta, you're not going to change the family structure of that, basically a prostitution ring. That's wild to say that. You're not going to change the grandfather and the mother, but you could work on them maybe a little bit and get some awareness. But man, like, we got to make sure those kids are okay, because those kids are going to be on the planet for another 60, 70 years.
And they're going to have kids.
Likely. Like, we got to stop the cycle. I'm sure that's part of like the motto at your organization. Is like, we can't let this be an endless cycle.
Right. That's exactly true. And it is, I mean, I'm not sure the study that you were referring to, but I have heard and read in a lot of research that a child's brain is 90% of a child's brain is fully developed by age 5. So all the little neurotransmitters that are constantly, talking to each other and synthesizing information. And like you said, like, there's so much coming in at them. I think that, I can't remember where I read it, but I remember reading that the most important thing between, birth or even before birth and age 5, that children are trying to decide if the world is a safe place or not. And so if they're coming into an abusive household and they're in survival mode, they're going to have a very different experience in life than somebody who, like, I had a very nice childhood. My parents took care of me. They fed me. I had a house. There were toys and books. And my mother was always like, read to your child, read to your child. And of course I did, because I wanted to do the right thing. But then when you
that's why Kyler's so smart.
He's
brilliant. I mean, I wouldn't just say that, because at the core, I generally think kids are smart, but they're smart for their age.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but like, he's pretty brilliant.
He's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, I know. But it was a lot of not just the reading, but the FaceTime, and the holding him. And every night before he goes to bed, I'd be like, what was your favorite part of today? And I think that a lot, again, we don't want to be judgy about screen time, but I think a lot of that gets lost right now because people are constantly working and on their phone or their laptop or watching the news or watching a movie or binging Netflix. We binge TV now. It's like a thing. And that every minute that that's happening is detracting from that child's experience of life, because they're not seeing the facial cues. They're not, developing the body language and seeing how you respond to words that they say. And, how they're processing their thoughts too. Talk therapy is a real thing. And when kids are questioning things, or they're, thinking, processing all night, if you're going to marry his mom, they need resolution.
Yeah, and the only reason I think he would ask me that is because I feel like I developed a relationship with him. One of the things that, it's so funny, like sometimes as a child, you get so mad about some things that your parents like told you to do.
Right.
And then you realize later on, you're like, yeah, that was actually a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
So one of them that I used to like really give my parents such a hard time about was always being home at 6:00 for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Used to hate it. Used to be like, but I want to be with my friends and I want to do whatever it was.
We're going through this right now.
Are you? But what? So now, and my girlfriend's always been great with this with her kids. They have family dinner. They do that together every night. But like I love that. So it's really hard to get in touch with me from like 7 to 9 at night, because I understand, and sometimes I'll make exceptions, but I understand that that's really, they're in school all day.
Right.
I'm not getting home until, probably 6:30, 7:00 anyway. Mm-hmm. Like I lived life. I'm there at the home. I just want to be present for that 2 hours. They go to bed at 9:00, and then I have, I go to bed at like 11. I try. Sometimes it ends up being 12. So I have another 3 hours to do some stuff afterwards.
Yeah.
But like that to me, so the family dinners, I was even like, that to me is important for a family structure. But like, no electronics at the table. Right. I know that we don't yell about screen time.
Right.
But
we
like,
don't yell.
If we're going to have dinner together, we, let's have dinner together.
And I remember when we were kids, my dad, if the phone rang at dinner, don't answer the phone. And now we do the same thing. And now I get it.
I remember when the first little TV came when I was a child, and the TV came into the kitchen because my dad wanted to watch the Giants. Ooh, because he had his rules. No answering the phone, none of that stuff. And then it was like, because we eat dinner at Sundays at 2.
Yes.
Because we thought we were Italian. We found that we were Greek.
We did too. We're English and Irish. But yeah, Sunday dinner, always at 2:00 with the whole family.
But then a TV snuck in there, and it changed everything. And then all of a sudden there was a TV in every room, and then we became isolated. And not that, at that time, because we were getting older, like we were teenagers at that point. So we had a strong foundation anyway. I don't think that set us off too much.
Right.
But, I tutor some kids at their home, and that I'm not trying to get stuck on that, but that is, I think it's just important to have the relationship. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
What was the worst? Like, I love Wendy. I'll start saying her name. I hate saying my girlfriend. Wendy says, like, what was your favorite part about today? What was the worst part about today? Yeah. Just start. And even if they don't say it, because a lot of times kids are like, if you're like, what happened at school today? A lot of kids are like, nothing.
I know.
Like, I used to get a hard time if I told my dad nothing. He'd be like, what do you mean nothing? Nothing means nothing. You did something.
I know.
But just to have that conversation, it's cool. And then something eventually comes out, but it's just
right. Yeah. But yeah, eventually something comes out. But back to your point, like these are things that we think about and we're like, what else can I ask about? And like, what specials did you have today? Who did you sit with at lunch? Like, how was gym? A parent that is, really trying and engaging, like those are mechanisms that we're teaching in parenting class, like how to connect. Even if it's an infant and you're cooking dinner, read the ingredients out loud because they're processing all those words that you're saying.
Right.
So it all brings it back to, what we do at the CPCA.
What do you guys think you do the most? You know what I started thinking about? Sorry, random thought. Because I was listening. I film my talks when I talk to people. So I'd listen back to it. And I realized I say a couple of things a lot. I use the word so a lot. Like, wait, if I'm going to, it's almost like my segue. Like, so the other thing I say is guys, you guys. And a lot of the times I'm talking to women, and and it's just like in my thing. So I'm just saying I was going to work on that.
Okay.
What do you think at the CPCA do you spend most of the like what kind of things are coming in? What are the calls about? What would you think really takes up your time? And because I want to talk about some of the impact that you have in the community, because we
Right.
started to get into it, but we didn't really go into
Right.
it. Like, is there a common misconception that I know there's probably a lot because
There's a
it's
lot.
case by case.
I mean, it is, and I don't want to make sweeping generalizations.
Right.
You know, but we do. There are, there's a rampant opioid problem right now. That can certainly affect parenting.
That's crazy. Like wild, you know.
And then, and as we're reaching out and talking with kids in the schools, what's really bubbling up a lot is cyberbullying, cybersecurity, because the old adage was like stranger danger, don't talk to a stranger in the grocery store. That is, I don't want to say debunked, because we know now that 80% of the children that are abused by family members or family friends. I say friends, but someone they thought they could trust, not a stranger.
Someone close to them in their life. Yeah.
But where it comes back into play is through the internet. And that lends itself, not only to like predators for child abuse, but the sex trafficking, child trafficking. It's all run through the internet. So that is something that we're working with in our personal safety program. We work with the 6th graders on, don't share your passwords, don't use your real name. Video, that is huge.
What do you mean?
Scary stuff is happening with video. I was at a conference, I think a year ago. I was at a conference, and there was a guy that was doing a presentation on sex trafficking, online sex trafficking. And he said, I work in the industry, so I thought that I had all of the securities in place, like you cover up the camera on your laptop. He goes, I came home from work one day, and my son was playing video games on the TV in the living room. And there's like that little side video screen so you can see who you're playing against. And it was a grown man naked.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't mean to laugh, but it's just funny that your eyebrows went and I can't see your mouth. But yeah, they're getting very like, this is. Yeah. And I was working, we have in our office some of the law enforcement. So we have.
Because that's something, I'm sorry, that's just something like, because I know kids a lot of times use services like Twitch where they can go and watch somebody play video games. But then you can also, like, if you have a console, like if I have a PlayStation, you have a PlayStation, we can play together and see each other and hear each other with the headset. But what I was getting at, it's not like, I don't think PlayStation, whatever company, whatever console it is monitoring the content, because it's not necessarily public. So they probably don't fall under the same guidelines with the FCC.
Right.
I would imagine. I'm guessing, knowing it's little what I know about it.
I think very hard.
So yeah, I could see how that would be, I don't want to say a loophole, but that might be like a hidden thing that, like you said, a lot of people aren't thinking about.
Yeah.
And kids spend a lot of time playing video games.
Right. And before I heard this, I never would have crossed my mind. You think about what happens on the internet, or maybe, on your phone, if you go on, Safari or YouTube, who knows what you could stumble into. But yeah, the predators are getting very, very conniving.
Somebody told me recently, and I've always heard it as an expression, but they talked about the dark web. And then I just thought that was like, that you'd really have to like Google hard, but it's actually like a different place on the internet. And it's where you can find some of these things.
Yeah.
It doesn't come up in a Google search. Like you almost have to like go, I don't know exactly how it works, but it's just a real thing.
And I'm scared to Google it because I don't want to.
Oh, you're going to get a knock on the door. I mean, hopefully you do. Hopefully somebody knocks on your door. It's like, hey, what are you doing?
But it's curious because we were talking one day. I was talking with someone that is works with the state police. And she said, well, if you go on this website and you type in, characteristics of somebody that you might want to meet, if it's a young girl with brown hair or whatever, and you will see ads will come up. And it'll be all these different young girls who are really young, but they all have the same phone number because
right.
it's all being run through that one person. So yeah, the back page, I think she said it was called back page, the dark web.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's scary. It's really scary, the stuff that's out there.
So what can we do?
So what can we do?
So, I mean, even that's like a much bigger mission, I think. Right.
Yeah.
But I guess the focus. So you see how I do that? You guys,
guys. So guys,
you guys get them all in there. Really just work on Poughkeepsie and Dutchess County.
Dutchess County. We do have some cases. We do some work in Ulster County for personal safety program. And we actually have some clients that are referred to us down from as far as, I think, the Bronx are referring parents to us because we have our parenting program is so comprehensive. It really is the best out there. It's a long program and it's very in-depth. And an exciting new thing that we're taking on right now, our parent educators are being certified in a program called Parenting Inside Out. And this is brand new. We're the only agency in Dutchess County that will be accredited as Parenting Inside Out institution. And this is specifically for parents who are in jail, prison, on probation, or parole. And so they have very specified tracks because those parents, right now we're giving them parent empowerment classes. They face additional hurdles of when you get released, if you don't have custody of your child, what if your child's other parent has another significant other? And so we're working really hard on reaching parents in as many different scenarios as we can. And we know that, we want to empower the children to say no to abusers. But that's hard. That's just really hard.
So when you say to say no to abusers, does that mean like no directly to them, or is it removing themselves from the situation and getting somebody else?
Right. Either is very hard.
Yeah.
We used to say, the old saying was no, say no, go away, tell an adult. But so many kids felt like they couldn't say no, that they couldn't follow through on the next two steps. So now we try to say no, try to walk away, but tell a trusted adult. But for them, it's so hard. So we've got that the intersection has got to be at the parents, and specifically parents that have little ones. So we're working, we work with parents in our community. We have parenting classes at the CPCA. We're in some of the correctional facilities right now. We're in some of the rehabs and detox centers for substance abuse. But it really is, I think that getting away from the scary phrase child abuse and just talking about this as like, you want to be the best parent that you can be. And everybody can learn something. I learn things every day, I'm no perfect parent for sure. But I learn really interesting things just listening in on class sometimes.
It's okay to say like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
That's okay. That's actually a powerful
It's scary
expression.
when people think that they do know. That's...
It's so interesting. Like I was talking to, I brought this up a lot because I was talking to a good friend of mine who has twins, and he raised them exactly the same, and they're totally different.
Yeah.
He's like, one's self-sufficient. The other one's like, if I don't get him a glass of water, like, it's like totally two different. So a lot of things, even if you think right. Like I think I have, I'm the youngest of four. None of what we do, none of who we are, we were all basically brought up with the same expectations and standards and whatever else was part of that upbringing. Totally different people.
Right.
Totally different. So whatever you think you might know may work. You may have just got lucky. You may have this awesome kid and you have nothing to do with it. This is possible. You might also have done everything right, and the child is a problem. It's not anybody's fault.
Right.
It's just it's human. It gets messy.
Right. But it's about finding a solution.
Yeah.
Right.
Or be open to seeking help.
Yeah. Everybody needs help.
or not know an answer.
Right.
When last week when I was in your office at the meeting, where you remember you were there?
Right.
John Fay was, I think it was John
Yeah.
Fay. So he was like in the side room, the conference room, and
Yeah.
there looked like there was like 10
Probably
or
had a
15
class
guys.
going on. Yep.
What was that?
That was the men's parenting group.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I find it amazing. I know like the culture of men is changing. Some of it
Yeah.
maybe I'll go with, some of it I don't, but
Yeah.
whatever. Like
Mhm.
this is what's happening, so I'm open to it. I thought it was pretty cool to think, like, I think 20 years ago, I don't know if you could get 15 men in a room talk
Right.
about parenting.
I know. I don't know if you read the email that I just sent out
No.
2 days ago, but one of John's guys.
Yeah. Wait, isn't that the guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
guy
So
that
I
we've
read
been
that.
talking about.
Yeah, I didn't know if we could. I didn't bring that up because I didn't know if we could talk about that.
We'll keep it general.
Okay, good.
But this guy, and it actually caught my eye because he's in our office like twice a week. And I'm like, what is he doing here? But he really was working.
Do you call them clients or
Clients.
they're clients? Okay.
Yeah. So he was coming to class, but he was also doing one-on-one sessions because he wanted so badly to be able to spend time with his kid.
Now, in a general sense, can you talk about the backstory, like how he even ended up there?
Well, he heard about our program while he was incarcerated. Because, as I said, we are in some of the local jails. He heard about the program, really made some really bad choices. But a lot of our clients do, and a lot of us do. A lot of us, we're all just humans, right? We make mistakes. We screw stuff up. But he wanted to be better, and he wanted to do better, and he wanted to be a better dad because there was a newborn. And he was like, man, like I screwed up so bad. I might never get to see my kid ever. So he signed up for the parenting class. He worked through while he was incarcerated. After he got out, he stayed with us. So it's the same educator, John, goes into the jails and also has classes at our center. Worked his way through the whole program, did a lot of like one-on-one stuff, like really processing what he went through as a child and how it had affected his decisions. And obviously when he was in jail, he had no visitation with his son. And then he got some visitation and then some more. And now he gets to see his little baby boy every other day.
It's amazing. Do you know his upbringing by any chance? Do you know his relationship with his father?
It's not good.
So I wonder if a part of him, I find it fascinating. People are so interesting to me. I wish I could just talk to everybody in the world. I really do, because there's like special moments. Like, I don't blame anybody for repeating what their parents did.
Right.
And I understand it's tough. Like that takes a lot of self-awareness and just changing a lot of things and being open to being like, oh wait, that wasn't good.
Right.
But somebody, it's so often that people get into a field because, or whatever they do, whatever their passion becomes, a lot of times it's from the thing that they missed or lacked when they were younger.
Yeah.
I don't know why I got into film and health coaching and all that. Like I can't think about it for myself.
Screen time.
But I know like a lot of drug counselors, they had drug use in the past. There's things like that. So it's so impressive for him to be like, I missed that. I want to make sure that I don't do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because he must have came to some of that realization on his own, or maybe in prison.
Yeah.
Where it's like, whoa, I can't. I don't have a choice. Like I better get my.
I mean, there's another example. She wasn't in prison, but another one of the clients that comes, she comes to class and has case management. She, I believe, had intellectual disabilities, but also in her childhood was removed from her bio parents at a very young age. Went to like 3 or 4 different foster homes, was abused over and over again, ended up homeless, ended up, I think, using drugs, maybe prostituting herself, then found herself pregnant, and walked through our doors last year and said, I have a big problem on my hands because I am going to give birth in 6 months and I have no idea how to be a parent. And my friend told me that she came here and you helped her. And she went through, the same process. And to see her come in, she too, she completed the program. So you don't get to see her all that often anymore. But every once in a while, she'll stop in and I get to hold the baby. And just to see that they're bonded. They have that bond for each other. And the baby comes in, she's well dressed, she's well fed, she's clean, her nails are trimmed. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing.
I think this is part of the reason why we like you guys so much, because one, you care.
Yeah.
You're good people, but also, you can't, it's not the type of organization where you can just have a campaign, have a slogan, have a building, and it's going to impact lives. You actually have to build relationships with people. And, that's important for anybody in business. And it's nice, but some businesses you can get away with not if you're selling sandwiches, relationships might help, but if your sandwiches are good, people are going to buy them.
Yeah.
You better build relationships and it better have an impact. And it sounds like you do. If you're getting referrals and people are like, I'm here because you helped out my friend.
Yeah.
Oh, what a good feel. I mean, whether she goes through with it or not, what a good feeling it is to know that somebody was talking about you and sharing something positive.
Yeah. It's cool. And even the puppeteers, when they go into the schools and they do the personal safety lessons with the kids, they're like rock stars.
So explain that.
So sorry. So when we go in, the personal safety program goes into little pre-K, first grade, second grade. They have puppets that are about this tall that they can act out a typical scenario. And in this scenario, there's usually a bad touch. And then the educators are like, oh, boys and girls, what should we do? Tell your mom. So it's interactive, but it's child friendly at the same time. We're not, we're keeping it on a very kid friendly level so that it's not awkward for them because it's a puppet and it's Officer Billy is here.
Yeah, and it's so heavy. It's such heavy stuff. Like you got to lighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, we do. And so when some of these kids, and what we're really excited about, one of the things we instituted.
Just bring it closer. You're starting to creep away. We've been talking for a little while, so you're starting to
relax.
You can sit back. Just bring the mic with you.
One of the things that we instituted this past year is this Apricot software. So now we're able to track data like longitudinally, because we know that there are some kids that have seen our program in pre-K, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, and now are we going to be able to demonstrate that they have, an exponentially higher, awareness of how to keep their bodies safe, as opposed to somebody who just transferred in sixth grade and got one lesson. But, to my point, when they come in with the puppets, the kids love it. They're like rock stars. It is. I mean, do you remember in third grade when it was like time for an assembly? You got so excited.
I can't. I try as an exercise to think back when I was younger, and it's so hard.
Well,
third grade, I don't have any memories from third grade.
Wow. Well, assemblies for me were exciting.
But I understand what it's like for the kids.
Or a special guest, right?
I'm going to draw a blank on this one.
No?
But I can relate to it in the sense because I have a finger. There's a monkey. It's called a fingerling.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So it's in my car. And when the little one, when Steven gets into the car, it's like just even that excites him. Like we had to get him one because he thought it was like the coolest thing ever.
Oh, yeah. Well,
so I could imagine if you come in with puppets who talk back and interact with you.
And they're
like you said, they're superstars.
Yeah. The staff are great too. It's like they put on a magic show. The kids are completely paying attention. They're yelling out the answers. They're telling the puppets what to do. And our
it's a good
staff are
reference to have,
great.
because then if they do, I guess that what the idea is when they do get into the real life situation, it's almost like practice.
Right.
Okay, I know. Oh yeah, I
Right.
remember my training.
Right.
Here's when I'm supposed to say
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. And then they learn the cues too. So, one of the scenarios is like the tickle game, and if your babysitter wants to play the tickle game and they're going to tickle your shoulders and then they might try to tickle somewhere else, they now know that, I've seen this before. This might not end well. Maybe we should not do the tickle game. So there's a lot of different scenarios that they work through with the
Why
kids.
does everybody play the tickle game? Like with parents and kids, no, I just think with my parents, we play the tickle game. Like we do tickle game at home now too. Like it happens. Like tickle fight.
That's true. It could be
But there
a
are
very
times
good thing.
somebody says like
Someone can take advantage
that's
of that.
too far, and it's
Right.
not in any negative way. It's not with ill intentions. It's just like, whoa.
Well, sometimes it is with ill intentions, and that's why we're trying to get kids to like trust your feelings.
Right.
Like if you get like, I don't think this is okay with me. Here are some techniques you could use to get yourself out of that situation. So we try to give them some resources.
So what's going to be happening this year? I know that you're probably besides like with my marketing meetings that we have.
Yeah.
What is the CPCA planning on doing this year? Can you talk about anything? I feel like a lot of exciting stuff is going on.
There is a lot of exciting stuff that's going on. I can tell you that we are expanding our services. And especially in our child advocacy center, we're going to be more trauma centered. So, right now we have on-site CPS and law enforcement, but we would like to have on-site mental health services as well. So it really is literally a one-stop shop.
The mental health stuff is big.
That's huge for us. We're really excited about that. We're going to be certified to be Parenting Inside Out accredited agency, so we'll be able to expand the services that we're providing to parents. We would love to get our personal safety program into some additional agencies and community settings. And something that we're pushing pretty hard right now is the idea of community education. So our personal safety program doesn't have to just go into school districts. We can do personal safety program for Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or businesses or other not-for-profits that work with kids. I think that there's a lot of opportunity. Right?
Yeah, I could see that.
We were actually just accredited as an autism supportive environment by the Anderson Center. So our whole facility has been reviewed, and we have upgrades that are going into place right now. And our whole staff has been trained. So if somebody comes through our doors, we know to say, like, before you even ask the question, because then it might be too late, here's where our restrooms are. If you need some quiet space to decompress, you can come into this area over here. My name is Kim. I am in this office right here. And so I think that there could be some real great collaboration with some of the other supportive agencies in the community. I'm
glad that we found out about the CPCA. Like sometimes my mom jokes, so I'm the youngest of 4, none of us have kids. So my parents would love to be grandparents. I don't know if that's going to happen, but we'll see. But my mom jokes about saying, like, if she were younger, she doesn't know if she would want to have a child. And the reason why she says that is because I think in her eyes, I'm gonna tell you why I'm explaining all this. In her eyes, it seems like parenting seems so daunting. There's so many things you have to worry about.
Right.
I'm saying that I'm glad that you at the CPCA are doing all of these things, because I don't know what parenting used to be like. Like I'm saying, like 1,000 years ago, or like, what it took. Did it take a village? Did it take a community to raise a child? Or was a mom and dad expected to raise one child? Or was it part of like this larger thing? But what I'm saying is, I think for a lot of parents, no matter what situation they're in, whether it's extreme or minor, are feeling a little, I don't want to say hopeless, because I don't think that's in a mother's DNA necessarily. Like they always have hope somewhere. It's like it's what keeps humans going in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I imagine that a lot of parents feel helpless because there's so many things going on. I mean, you just brought up like autism, mental health things.
Right.
You know, forget about the extremes
Right.
and the other things, but maybe it's reaching a point where maybe it's not meant for a lot of parents to do on their own.
Right.
And maybe we do need to look more and develop more services where people at least have that outlet in case they
Right.
need it.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff going on. Like this morning there was I was telling you there was somebody in here and we were just talking about Facebook and how Facebook changes, and it's so hard to understand Facebook. It's just a social media platform. I'm not
Right.
even talking about a human.
Right.
So like to think about how hard it is to understand all of the things that are going on right now.
Right.
Parents probably spend more time. I mean, we were talking about this a little bit, but I would imagine compared to 1,000 years ago or even 100 years ago, children spend more time away from their parents than probably ever before, right?
Yeah.
So, and then, you know, it's kind of, in a lot of ways, this is a social experiment. Like a lot of the things are going on right now are just an experiment. Like we don't know if a lot of these things are going to work. Like everything I'm talking about the world.
Right.
So I think it's important to have
but
people who are credited in certain things and are there to help.
Yeah. So all these scary, like, and this is, you know, what I think about at night, all these like social experiments are happening and we're seeing this increase in violence in children, and that there can't not be a correlation. I don't know what it is. I won't pretend to
when
be
you say
like,
increase in violence,
like the school shootings and things like that.
Right.
You know, is it because they aren't spending time with their parents? Is it because they're playing violent video games? Is it because it could be so many different things? But it's a hard time to be a parent, but it's also a really hard time to be a kid.
Yes.
You know,
it's not their fault.
Right. And I think that gets lost a lot because, you know, some of these, I just saw on Facebook the other day that there was a 10-year-old boy that committed suicide because he was being bullied, because it doesn't just happen at school anymore. Now you go home and it's on social media and it's, you know, the guys that you're playing your video games with. And even if you know, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, even good parents who think they're doing the right thing. It's 9 o'clock, lights out. It's time for bed. The kid can take the phone back out, you know, and then they could be up until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, and I think that happens, you know. Yesterday I was on Facebook looking at something and I was like, oh my God, I just lost 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I had no idea. I was trying to research something.
Whatever it was, it
was. You know, but I'm a grown up. You know, I'm a 38-year-old woman who takes care of another tiny person. And I totally lost track of time down the wormhole. You know, so when these kids are, you know, pulled into this, you know, online scene or whatever it is, I mean, even if it's really negative and hurtful, like how could they have the self-awareness to be like, I better put this away. This is starting to really damage my self-image.
None.
Right.
No, there's not. I mean, you know, because like you just said, you get lost in it.
Yeah.
So like if we do, they do.
Yeah.
So do you talk a lot about social media stuff with parents?
We talk with parents and with
about
kids.
the children's social media, not about their own. You know,
well,
maybe
we
you do
both.
with them too. Yeah,
we do both. So we talk with kids. The 6th grade, we do a lot of internet safety with them. Like I said, the stranger danger and stuff like that. That's all online now, you know, so kids are very aware. Like Kyler will tell you, you know, if someone sends him a friend request, that's probably not the person that they're pretending that they are. He's heard this lesson more than once. You know, so we work with kids to make sure that they're staying safe.
I need some of those lessons. I just got a follow request yesterday. The person was following 8,000 people and had 0 posts. And I'm like, I'm not letting you in.
No, not good.
Like my Instagram is set to private, and not because I'm trying to hide it. I just, you know, it's like,
well, you never know. And then, so to the parents, So we're talking to parents and saying, here's how your children can keep themselves safe, but also be careful what you're posting online, because what you might think is like, Johnny's first bath, and it's not an inappropriate photo.
It's wild that you have to think about that now. Yeah, but you do. You're right. I mean, you do. If you're going to put stuff out there,
looking, and the ones that are looking, they're looking hard. So it's a two-way conversation. You have to keep your kids safe, like so that they can keep themselves safe, but also know that there are predators that are just trolling the internet looking for kids. So happy Thursday.
You have a lot of work cut out for you.
Yeah.
We might be at the close. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean,
I know we talked about so much.
Yeah. The only other thing we haven't talked about is the benefit.
You do have that coming up.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. May 2nd.
I'm excited to be a part of that.
It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Champions Against Child Abuse.
So how did you who came up with that? Because I thought I was in the marketing committee and I had nothing to do with that.
Well,
I'm teasing you.
Last year, we used to call it, it used to be called There's No Excuse for Child Abuse. But when I came on last year, I was like, that's like, I don't know.
It's just a rhyme.
It felt a little judgy, and some of the parents that come to our program, like they are there because they have already abused their kids. And not to say that there is an excuse to hurt a child, but why don't we just say it in a different way? So why not, instead of being negative, let's be champions, for kids. Let's empower. Let's talk about the good that's happening. And so we're along the lines of marketing and PR. We're honoring Scott and Diane Powensky from Branding Pros, because they helped us with the whole logo rebranding. And Jeff Brault, he's come on and he's helped out a lot with a lot of the PR. And, I'm texting him questions about, am I allowed to say this in a press release at 8 o'clock at night, because we don't have a marketing person on staff. We're still a really small little organization.
I think you're better to have that anyway, because, you know what, some of the issue, especially I always call out Natalie on this in a lot of ways, but Natalie's from a younger generation. So Natalie's in her mid-20s. And I think our generation started to do this, but we're not huge fans of just being marketed at. When we see a commercial, we turn away.
That's true.
What we really look for, and again, it started with us, but the next generation really took this over, is more, even if it's not true authenticity, better feel like it.
Yeah.
And it's just being authentic. And maybe somewhere down the road, it'll become a point where maybe a marketing company will have some autonomy and can handle some things.
Right.
But to really have that personal touch on it and to talk about stories that really matter in real time, it's a lot of it's got to be done internally. That's true. Like we've tried to hire like marketing. We work with somebody, a marketing guy now, who advises us.
Yeah.
Like nobody's, I mean, if we need something designed, we use a graphic designer, but we are working hand in hand with like everything that we put out.
Yeah.
But ultimately it's on us and what we feel comfortable with, because we're here every day.
Right.
Like we know what's going on.
It's true.
We know what people are really reacting to and what they're not. So, I mean, it's the same thing with you. So don't ever relinquish too much.
No.
Of the marketing,
the thing that I like about our team is that they are so genuine. Like Chrissy's our director of development now. She's been there for like 12 years.
Has she really?
Oh, yeah. She knows this. CPCA is like in her blood. She knows everything, all the stories, all the, everything that we've been through. And she'll tell you all about it. I think our biggest problem is just that we haven't really been telling people. So we have to do that. But we also really need to work on that stigma about, oh, it's child abuse. It's not child abuse. It's really just about like taking 5 minutes and, looking at your child, look them in the eye.
A lot of times it's just like you said, it's changing small things.
Yeah.
But I think you're on the right track with, how you're messaging some stuff, because it's like you said, it's hard. Like when, just knowing that you're dealing with child abuse, like a lot of people are like, oh, that's too tough for me.
Yeah.
But to have a message where it's more inclusive.
Yeah.
I think that's really important to try to have there's probably no such thing as a true universal message.
Right.
Like they're tough to find.
Yeah.
But how can we widen the net to have as many people in this doing the right thing as possible? Like, and I think it's champions
against child abuse.
Champions against child abuse.
Yeah.
Can't argue that.
You can't. And everybody, and we toss around a lot of these like champion and hero and the Hall of Heroes. But we really, everyone can be a hero for kids. All you have to do is like pay attention. If you don't want to get involved, just call. Make the call. There's hotlines. There's one for mandated reporters, and then there's another one for just community members, concerned citizens that if you think something's not right, you call that hotline number. It's completely anonymous. And they will deploy a team of investigators to find out if that child is okay. Just that simple.
Sometimes you just got to listen.
Yeah.
Like you said that earlier. Sometimes it's just listening.
Yeah. Or just looking, and now I've been at the center now for about 1.5 years, and there are things that I never would have noticed before, but the staff, the teachers, the case managers, I now check like, oh, are the baby's nails cut? Are that, like all these tiny little things that I probably would have never noticed before, unless it was my own kid. And maybe sometimes not even then.
Right.
But just little cues to make sure that kid is being taken care of,
You know what else is? I don't think we touched on this. What's really cool that you do is, and I don't know how to phrase it right, but there are people, I guess, with, I don't think we don't say mental disabilities anymore, but with like Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually parenting classes for that, right?
Specifically for
that
them.
was one of the coolest things that I saw. Cause I was like, I didn't even think about, like, for me, again, ignorance, like I'm silly. I don't know everything by far. I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that this was a thing.
Right.
Didn't even think that this would need to be a thing.
And it's a lot of people get confused because they think, oh, it's a parenting class for kids that have special needs. So it's called our special needs parenting program.
Okay.
It's for grownups with intellectual or developmental disabilities. And so the reason that it's separate from our parent empowerment program is that the messaging is different. The workbooks have less words. They have more pictures. It's a little bit easier for them to understand. And that specific class includes 2 hours a week of home visiting to reinforce and reinforce and reinforce the lessons that they learn in class. And like I said, or didn't say, it's not the child that has the disability, it's the parent. And so for them, they face a whole other host of challenges.
The child of the two parents might not even have a disability themselves,
it's
right?
True.
Right.
They may or they may not.
Right.
But we're working really hard with them. I have, it's really unfortunate that I don't want to make a sweeping generalization, but I think a lot of assumptions get made that, parents that have significant disabilities like that, we just need to take their kids away. And it happens a lot. We have a lot of our parents, their kids have been removed from their custody.
But ideally, if you can make it work, there's nobody better to raise them.
And we had, and we've been working on this, working really, really hard on measuring our success. Like, how do we know that what we're doing is working? And I think it was like the last week of December. One of the girls, they're actually, mom and dad are both enrolled in our class and get specialized visiting. Their first child was removed. She wanted a baby, so they had a second baby, and that child was taken from them in the hospital. But they've been working on it, and they come to class and they do all the home visits, and they.
How does the hospital measure that? I mean, are they
CPS
doing
involvement? CPS gets.
But are they saying based on your IQ, or like is there like a test that's? You know what I'm saying?
No, right. No, it's not like a check the box, like you don't get to keep your kid. It's, because that family was already had an open CPS investigation
Okay.
because the first son had been removed. That, based on XYZ factors, like Child Protective Services does not believe that it would be safe for this child to go home with these parents at this time.
I see. There's just so much stuff that goes on in the world that you don't even like. For me, like I'm not in this world, so I don't even think that this goes on a daily basis.
But
those parents still know. I mean, sorry, I'm stuck on this, but like
okay.
if when they have special needs, I think so. Again, my sort of ignorant interpretation or what I'm hearing is like there's going to be a lot of people out there who are like, well, that's fine, but like they have feelings too. Like they know that their child was taken away from them.
Right. Yes. And it's devastating. Devastating. But our little couple, they've been working really, really hard. And this was the first Christmas that they had as a family unit because they got unsupervised visitation. Wow. So it's working. There's hope out there.
Can they be in our video? Is that possible?
Yeah. They'd probably be very excited.
Oh, this would be fun.
Yeah.
So I think we covered everything. I've kept you here for a while. I think we've been doing an hour and a half now.
Okay.
I think you're pretty good. Okay. So just a couple of things. Just give me some quick like info stuff. Mm-hmm. I know that we talked about there's a couple of things I want you to cover. So like we're saying, if you see something, say something, sort of approach. So if I see something, who am I supposed to call? What number?
If you go, it's the New York State Central Registry for Child Abuse. And then you can literally just click the number from your phone and it'll dial.
And you can make that call anonymously or?
Mm-hmm, you can. Yep.
Just in case, sometimes that's a thing with people.
Yeah, a lot of people get worried like, oh, I don't want to get involved. Maybe it's just like their family business. But you can totally call anonymously.
Do you think a lot of people are seeing stuff and not and ignoring it? Do you think that's common?
I do. And I think, and again, I'm not an expert in this field, and I would never pretend to be, but I think back to like, when we're watching these interviews with the kids that go through these like school shootings, and everyone was like, yeah, I kind of thought, and it's like, call. Just call.
And
not that we want to put anyone in danger or in harm's way, but like.
Well, that's why I mentioned the anonymous. I mean, if you're unsure, in some ways, it's probably better to call and be wrong than not call and you were right.
Right.
So probably enough people are not calling.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to think that even working with you and talking to you, like I know that it's changed my outlook on stuff, and I know that I'll be more willing to make a call if I need to. Right. Before I would have not. I would have said my dad did so much worse than that.
I know.
I'm just talking just abuse wise.
Right.
I would. We grew up in a different time. More things were acceptable. I have air quotes up for people that are listening. So not acceptable anymore. I'm not into it. I don't think it's beneficial, like the old parenting ways.
Right.
But that's what happened, and that stuff is done. But it's important not to repeat this.
It is, and it's actually just recently. The American Academy of Pediatrics, for the very, very first time ever, came out with a statement that said, hitting your kid is not good. That there are more effective ways of discipline than corporal punishment. And it's kind of a big deal. And if you look back in history, they'll say like, oh, you should limit it. But they never before have said, do not hit your kids. Mm-hmm. And like I said before, it's just because now we know better, so we can do better.
You're going to end on that.
Okay.
Now we know better, so now we can do better. Do you say that often? We got to start saying that more.
I've said it a few times.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Though. Yeah.
So it's the website is the CPCA.org. Mm-hmm. So you can volunteer, donate. just learn about
and
it.
that's it too. If you ever have questions and you're like, should I make a phone call or should I not? Or what phone call do I have to make? And you're not sure, just call us 845-454-0595. We're happy to provide information to anybody at any time. Well, it's not a hotline. We are open 9 to 5, but we'll call you back.
The services, is there a charge for stuff if somebody comes in?
No, everything's free.
Everything's free.
Everything is free.
We put that at the end. I got to put it in the description of this. Everything is free. Would you
Free.
call up and use the
F-R-E-E.
service? Yeah. If somebody's probably thinking like, yeah, I would love to do it, but I'm a single mom and I don't have the
Right.
resources to do it. No, it's free.
It's not only free, but we also, in certain instances, can provide transportation to and from class and childcare. So if you're like, oh, I'm really having a hard time, but like my neighbor can only watch my kid on Wednesday nights and classes on Tuesday nights, and the classes are staggered. A lot of the classes are after regular business hours. Some are during. So if you work, a second or a third shift, we try to be as available to everyone as we can and to take away those barriers, because it's hard enough. It's hard enough to get to the place where you're like, I need help. And then to be like, now I have to find a way there. And then I have to find daycare. And then I have to find a way to pay for this. No, we want to take all of that away. And then the additional support that we have for parents through like the diaper closet, we have the food pantry, because we know that by the time you get to that place where you're like, I need help, it's not just like potty training. It's probably like, I don't know what I'm going to feed my child for dinner tonight. So we can alleviate that stuff as well, because we have donations that come in from our community that help parents that are already working really hard to be the best parents they can.
Kimberly Kochem, Executive Director of the CPCA. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
You're done.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Simple as that. We can hit end on the YouTube. That wasn't so bad.
Okay.
The little red button at the bottom. Sorry, my thing is I'm in your way. I'll figure it out.